2001 saw the launch of The Fast and the Furious, one of the most bonkers film franchises of all time. But the screen story by Gary Scott Thompson that would eventually give us physics-defying bank heists actually started on the pages of Vibe magazine.
Written in 1998 by Kenneth Li, the article titled Racer X was the inspiration for the street race setting of the original Fast and Furious film.
So, how does a magazine feature turn into NOS-fueled mayhem? Get ready to watch this video a quarter mile at a time because it's time to ask, what's the difference? This is actually the first magazine article we've covered on What's the Difference, and it's just fascinating that The Fast and the Furious as we know it today was originally based on something.
Kenneth Li's Racer X is a profile of legendary drag racer Rafael Estevez and his journey from racing illegally on the streets of New York to legit industry-endorsed circuits, painting a vibrant picture of the drag racing scene on the East Coast in the 90s.
Meanwhile, The Fast and the Furious adds a healthy dose of Point Break to the mix with a high-octane tale of Brian O'Connor, an undercover cop tasked with taking down a gang of precision-driving, DVD player thieving badasses.
Yeah, see, that's way different.
Sure is. So this adaptation, I guess, is an interesting look at how a film can take more than just narrative cues from the source material, because these two have an unsurprisingly small amount of story in common, but what they actually do share narratively is the best place to start.
The article opens with a beat-for-beat description of a typical drag race. A swarm of cars buzzing around the back roads of uptown Manhattan, all brightly colored, low-cost imports tricked out and covered with auto part decals. Oh, badass. The race starts with the hands dropping, moves on to dizzying speeds that blur the driver's vision, and two cars jockeying back and forth until the hero of the piece, Rafael Estevez, comes out on top. Hey, yeah! It's good to drive fast.
The movie opens on a high-speed 18-wheeler heist and a testosterone-soaked introduction to some of the key players. Of course, none of that is in the article because it didn't really happen. But soon enough, we're on the strip and a race that plays out pretty much the same way as the article. Even the visual effects of the scene, the warped street zipping by the drivers, gritting their teeth at the force of the speed, all come straight from the imagery in the article.
This opening street race also introduces another idea from the article: running from the cops.
We got cops!
Kenneth Li digs into the NYPD's late 90s crackdown on street racing and constantly ducking the cops. Estevez, who claims in the article to do whatever it takes to get away from them, also talks about growing up fascinated by the Dukes of Hazzard and how they always got away. And so the opening street race in the film ends with the cops crashing the party and a free-for-all chase away from the scene.
While the film's first racing set piece is narratively pretty similar to the article, when Brian picks up Dom and gets him away from the cops, we see a fairly major difference. Dom appreciates Brian's code of ethics, and the undercover cop finds himself in Toretto's good graces. Dom even goes so far as to offer Brian any beer he wants.
As long as it's a Corona.
Kind of.
And while the article portrays Rafael as sharing Dom's obsession with speed, to Estevez, valor, compassion, and honor are, according to Li, synonymous with second place.
And even though Rafael is not technically a character in the film, Hector seems to be a nod to the real-life racer.
They call me Hector. Got a last name too, but I can't pronounce it, so...
In the film, Hector isn't racing on the street because he's going legit and later has lots of cash to drop on new engine parts. The article covers a similar ascent for Estevez, who fields sponsorship offers from industry reps after a record-setting showing at Drag Wars.
Which is another part of the film pulled from the article, but renamed, very unfortunately, to Race Wars. The article builds suspense in the lead up to the event with a pseudo-training montage of mechanics whipping Estevez's Civic into form and all the hurdles he had to clear along the way, including an operation on an infected appendix just 3 days before the race.
The movie bills Race Wars as a similarly pivotal event, complete with its own mechanics montage. Mechana-montage? Mechanitage?
I mean, yeah, why not?
Complete with its own mechanitage. The stakes of Race Wars in the film, of course, have more to do with Brian's investigation closing in on several different suspects and the deadly dynamic between Dom's crew and rival Johnny Tran, but the arc that leads us to Race Wars is structured in the same way Kenneth Li built it in the article.
So what do you say? Am I worthy?
We don't know yet.
And so The Fast and the Furious as an adaptation really earns the inspired by label. Kenneth Li's article is written with a ton of energy and a pace that's as breakneck as the races it describes. It presents a tone that laid the groundwork for, we believe, the entire franchise.
My ass is in fuego!
More than anything else, the article is about a diverse group of speed junkies, constantly one-upping each other and valuing the excitement of NOS-fueled drag racing over anything else.
The philosophies presented in the article that it's about how much power you bring to the street and how you control it, that racing is also as much about psychology and beating the other driver even if you're in a slower car, show up explicitly in The Fast and the Furious. But more than that, the mentality of street racing that Kenneth Li presented in Vibe has survived in the DNA of the entire film franchise.
They got a tank.
There's a not unfair question around The Fast and the Furious about how street racers turned into globally renowned intelligence operatives in just a few movies. But when it's all about a tight-knit community based on thrills and brinkmanship and coming out on top even though you're outmatched on paper, you could draw a pretty straight line between Kenneth Li's article to cars flying between buildings in Dubai and The Rock literally flexing out of his cast.
More than that, the filmmakers themselves have obviously adopted the same philosophy. Going bigger than the last movie is nothing new with Hollywood franchises, but there's something that works more organically with these. When each new chapter of Dom and his family's adventure asks how it can out Fast and Furious the previous one, there's a truth to it, as bonkers as it may be, because of Kenneth Li's original take on the drag racing scene.
We didn't think there was going to be like 7. we didn't think it was going to be 1.
That'll do it for this installment of What's the Difference, but we'll be back next time and we'll go to space.
Yeah, we're back in time.
Ooh, yeah, or do a spin-off that's not super concerned with continuity? No, time travel. Time travel feels right. Either way, subscribe to IGN Movies and TV for more What's the Difference.